Ambassador Zekthor's secondary respiratory system wheezed in what his species considered nervous laughter as he watched the primitive biped through the reinforced observation deck. The creature sat motionless in the center of the containment cell, its strange forward-facing predator eyes closed in what the Galactic Council's xenobiologist had classified as meditation. "Are you certain the restraints will hold?" asked Commander Veiltas, her chitinous exoskeleton clicking with anxiety. The preliminary reports from the Outer Rim colonies were disturbing. Zekthor's tentacles rippled with confidence. The neural dampening field alone should render it docile. Combined with the quantum-locked shackles and the psionic suppressors, that Deathworlder isn't going anywhere. The human designation Marcus Chen had been captured 3 cycles ago during what the Council termed a diplomatic misunderstanding. His ship had been defending a small colony of refugee Cathali when Council forces arrived to relocate them to a more suitable habitat. The stubborn creature had single-handedly disabled 2 cruisers before finally being overwhelmed. "I still don't understand why we're keeping it alive," Veiltas muttered. "The Deathworld designation exists for a reason. These terraborn creatures are walking weapons. Precisely why we need to study it," Zekthor replied, his vocal cords vibrating with anticipation. "Imagine if we could harness their aggression, their impossible endurance. The Council's expansion would be unstoppable." On the surveillance feeds, Marcus hadn't moved for 6 hours. His vital signs remained steady, impossibly steady for a creature supposedly under extreme stress. Most species would have succumbed to panic or catatonia by now. The human simply waited. Dr. Zilandra entered the observation deck, her forearms carrying various scanning devices. "The preliminary neural mapping is complete," she announced. "This specimen's brain chemistry is unlike anything in our databases. The stress hormone levels should have killed it 3 times over, yet it shows no signs of deterioration." "Stress adaptation," Zekthor mused. "These Deathworlders evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every moment of every day. They're built differently." What they didn't understand, what none of them could comprehend, was that Marcus wasn't just adapting to stress. He was using it. Every hour in captivity, every moment of discomfort, was being cataloged and converted into fuel for what was coming. The human opened his eyes. The simple action shouldn't have been terrifying, but every being in the observation deck took an involuntary step backward. Those predator eyes swept the cell with methodical precision, mapping every surface, every joint, every potential weakness. "Fascinating," Dr. Zilandra whispered. "Look at these readings." The creature's cognitive activity just increased by 300%. It's been thinking this entire time. Marcus stood slowly, the quantum-locked shackles humming with contained energy. He examined them with the casual interest of someone studying an interesting puzzle, rather than the desperation of a trapped animal. "The shackles are rated for beings with 3 times its muscle mass," Veiltas said, though her voice carried less certainty than before. Marcus smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression, not the gentle expression of joy that other species might recognize. It was the baring of a persistence predator's teeth, the promise of something that would chase you across continents and never ever stop. He began to move. Not frantically, not with the wild thrashing of a caged beast. Marcus moved with the deliberate precision of someone who had spent years learning exactly how much force every joint in his body could generate, exactly how far every tendon could stretch before snapping. "What is it doing?" Zekthor demanded. The human was rotating his shoulders in slow, measured circles, stretching, warming up. The neural dampening field should have made such coordination impossible, but he moved as if it didn't exist. "The dampening field," Dr. Zilandra started to say, then stopped as her instruments registered something impossible. "The field is active, but it's not affecting him. His neural pathways are adapting in real time." Marcus hyperextended his thumb until it touched his wrist, a feat that should have been anatomically impossible. But humans, they remembered now from the files, were descended from creatures that had escaped predators by squeezing through impossibly small spaces. The first quantum lock disengaged with a soft chime. "Alert the guards." Veiltas shrieked, but Zekthor was transfixed by what he was witnessing. The human had somehow compressed his hand small enough to slip through restraints designed by the galaxy's finest engineers. Marcus flexed his freed hand, then began working on the ankle restraints. His movements were economical, efficient, the actions of someone who had clearly done this before. "How many times do you think he's been captured?" Dr. Zilandra asked in horrified fascination. The second lock disengaged, then the third. As the final restraint fell away, Marcus stood and stretched, really stretched, and the council representatives got their first glimpse of what a human looked like when it was no longer pretending to be contained. He turned toward the observation deck and spoke, his voice carrying clearly through the supposedly soundproof barrier. "You know, I actually tried to warn you about this during the surrender negotiations. I said exactly these words. This is why you never try to chain a Deathworlder. The containment cell's door, 3 feet of composite metal and energy shielding, crumpled inward like paper as Marcus drove his shoulder against it. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire station, but you wanted to study the scary human," Marcus continued conversationally as he stepped through the ruined doorway. "You wanted to understand what makes us tick." Alarms began blaring throughout the facility. "Here's your lesson," Marcus said, and his smile widened. "We don't break because we're angry. We don't fight because we're savage. We do what we do because we evolved on a world that taught us the most important lesson in the universe." He began walking toward the observation deck, each step deliberate and unhurried. "When something tries to cage you," Marcus said, "you don't just escape. You make sure it never tries to cage anyone ever again." The last thing Zekthor saw before the reinforced observation deck exploded inward was that terrible human smile, and he finally understood why the galaxy had designated Terra a death world. It wasn't because of the predators, the diseases, or the natural disasters. It was because of what those things had created. As Marcus stepped through the debris, he activated his concealed communicator, the one they hadn't found because they'd assumed no species could hide technology inside their own body cavity. "This is Chen to Colonial Defense Fleet," he said calmly. "The council facility is secured. You may begin rescue operations for the Cathali refugees." He looked down at the trembling Ambassador Zekthor. "Next time," Marcus said gently, "try asking nicely first.